Welcome everybody to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and tonight we have a full panel. We've got Nicole Weber, who's muted. Unmute yourself, Nicole.
There we go.
Thank you. Nicole Weber is my new co-host, so welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
And we've got Nost from Conspiracy Prime, and we've got Odessa, who is my chat room hostess extraordinaire. Okay. Our special guest tonight is AAGE NOST. We're going to dig into a lot of different subjects with this man. He is very well versed. So if you have questions, please type them in capital letters in the chat room, and Odessa will try to get them to us on the panel so that we can address them. We're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects, probably some really interesting ones that we've never touched base on before. So come along for the ride. Let's go down that rabbit hole and see where it goes. Okay, AAGE, can you let us know how you first got involved with ufology, okay, with UFOs, and some of your personal accounts, so people know where you're coming from and what you've seen?
Oh boy, oh boy. I think that probably dates back to the Dark Ages. Pretty close to about 3 weeks after the beginning of time, because when I was a little kid, this is a story actually I don't think I talked about hardly ever on shows, and I'm going to tell it to you. When I was a little kid, probably about 7 or 8 years old, something like that, back on the farm in Norway, there were two guys that came as a kind of like a work crew to help us in the harvest. And one of them said that he was a prisoner in a German concentration camp during the war. And he said that we saw round airplanes flying around in the sky over Germany, he said, and they had no wings, had no motors, nothing, and they were quiet. And I knew enough about airplanes by then that I knew airplanes, they have wings. What happened to these round ones? They didn't have any, so I got puzzled. And not much affected me at that time until later on when I started doing my own research. Then I thought back to that moment when they talked about that, and then it started to make sense. But that's probably the beginning, because later on, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I built a UFO detector that I built around a compass, and it was a simple thing. Anybody can make this thing for about $20. And I set it up. I had it hooked up to a battery so that I figured that if anything was floating through the air, they had a gravity nullification or anti-gravity effect to it, then it should affect the ripples in the Earth magnetic field, which again should affect a compass needle, so it would turn. So if it turned, it would touch a wire that would set off a circuit going through a bell, and then the alarm went off. And I put this thing together, and it worked. the twice that it went off, I ran outside with binoculars. I looked up into the sky all over the place, and I saw something that shouldn't be there because it was all lit up. Airplanes aren't lit up like that. And that's probably the beginning of my UFO research, when I started to get fascinated by it.
Some airplanes are lit up a lot, but they don't have multiple colored lights other than red, green, and white, from what I understand. What I'm going to say to you is this. Okay, so can you tell us about your experience when you were 11?
When I was 11 years old, that was when I built that UFO detector. I went outside and looked around with the binoculars, and I saw this thing. One of them was a long, kind of like, I guess we call them cigars now, but it was all lit up like a light bulb. And another one, I seem to remember it was kind of triangular shaped. And that was further away, but because it was further away, it was probably also much bigger. But that was the two first time, and my mom told me that, what's that thing up in your bedroom? And the bell is going off all the time. And of course, I was at school. I didn't hear anything. So it was working.
That's good. Have you had any other experiences since the age of 11?
Yeah, I have. And because at the age of 25, I left Norway and came to the United States to become a professional pilot. And I did that, and I flew for a living for 25 years. And you fly as much as I did, then you see stuff. And one particular incident that I remember very clearly, and that was I was on a medical flight in a King Air. We were going through in and out of the clouds. And there were one time we came out of the clouds, leaving Omaha, Nebraska, and going, I'm not sure where we were going, but we were going somewhere. I think maybe down to the Burn Center in Houston. I'm not sure. And we came out of the clouds, and about some 2-3 miles ahead of us, there was this, it looked like a pencil, totally black, kind of sharp at the beginning edge. And then it was more like a kind of like a rounded end at the back, but it came off of the left sphere of vision and moved across our path at the same altitude very quickly. It probably took about 3 to 5 seconds to move from that edge of horizon to that edge of the horizon.
Wow.
And it was very fast. I remember after that, I looked over to the co-pilot. I was in the captain's seat, and I looked over to the co-pilot, and I asked him, "Did you see that?" And he looked at me. He looked forward. He didn't say a thing. And I remember after a little bit, I asked him again. He didn't say anything. And I think I remember I asked him one more time after I got on the ground, and he didn't want to talk about it. So I started thinking about that. And then I remember he was a born-again Christian. And in their view, anything that you can't explain or anything that is not in the Bible, those are demons. So I can understand very well why he did not want to talk about it. And I'm good with that. Absolutely good with that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I remember it still, and I'm sure he does too. He just probably thinks about it, but he don't want to talk about it.
Did you ever report it once you saw it?
No, this was in I don't know, in the 80s, late 80s, something like that. So
it would have jeopardized your job if you would have done
that. Well, no, that was not an issue for us, because that doesn't matter.
Well, was there any kind of reporting system at the time? Probably not.
Yeah, it was a private company, so we just didn't worry about that.
Right.
Gotcha. Nicole, you're up to bat.
All right. Well, I have a lot of questions. So going back to one of your first experiences was at age 11, and then what chronologically can you kind of run us through what things were like? Because I know for me as an experiencer, things there was a peak period where it was just like every 2 weeks there was something. So I'm just kind of wondering what your course was like through this.
Actually, you were blocked out a little bit in the middle of that. Could you say that last part of it again?
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I'm curious as to chronologically, if you can kind of run us through like what your experiences were, and
Okay, yeah.
like how frequent, maybe, because I know there's always it seems like there's that peak time where they're coming nonstop, and I was just curious about that.
Yeah, there was another time that was in northern Nebraska. I was on a flight, but I had a layover, and I was a flight instructor. So whenever people wanted to go and learn something, I just went with them, and we had an instructional hour. And I was in an airplane with a lady one time, and she was under the hood where you cover up so you can't see anything outside. You can only see the panel.
The foggle.
And she was practicing for an instrument reading. And I saw out of the right, of course, everything is backwards here on the screen, but on my right, coming towards me at a 45-degree angle, there was a really strange shaped object that came. And it looked almost like it was flat, but a little bit up at the end, almost like a skateboard. But on the side of it, it had rows of windows. And this thing came pretty quick. It was really scooting along, and it went about 400 foot underneath my airplane and disappeared off to the other side. And I saw that, and I didn't think much about it. Kind of like, wow, that is strange. And by the time it had gotten underneath the airplane and gone, then I took the hood off. The lady said, "Look, do you see that?" And she looked, and she couldn't see it because it was gone by then. It was nowhere to be seen. But that thing must probably have been, it wasn't really big, probably around maybe 15 to 20 feet. Well, maybe, no, I was thinking meters here, maybe about 15 meters long to 20 meters. That's about 50 feet or so long. And it was strange because I haven't seen any more drawings or somebody explaining anything like this. This was kind of unique because I haven't seen them like that. Though it was flat and had windows on the side. So I don't know. I have no clue what it was. Evidently, there was, I'm sure that shape was not one of ours.
Yeah.
And then with that, did you experience any of the ETs?
No, not at that time. I haven't really any good memory of ET in experience, except for one time where, oh boy, I guess I'll go there.
Thank you.
I had an incredible experience where I was sitting in meditation, and let me go back a little further. I came to the United States in 1972, went to flight school. I went back to Norway during that Christmas to visit. And I went back to the farm that now somebody bought it, and they owned it now. So I walked into the forest that we had. In the middle of that forest, there was a grave mound, a Viking grave mound. And I crawled up on that thing, and there was a rock up there. So I sat down and I meditated. It's just closed the mind down and didn't think about anything. And then I started hearing kind of like if somebody turned a faucet on. There was like the water was running. And it kind of surprised me. So I opened my eyes up, and right in front of me, right there, was a man standing. He was about 7 foot tall. He had a kind of like a robe on, and it was gold cufflinks and gold around the collar. and he was lit up like a light bulb. And it scared the living daylight out of me. I just jumped up, ran down the grave mound and headed off back. And I heard this voice in my head that said, "Where are you going?" And I thought about that, well, if he wanted to get me, he probably would have done that by now. So I walked back, and I walked up on the grave mound, and we had a conversation. It was, well, mostly him talking, me listen deal. But I did get some questions in. And one of the questions was, "What is your name?" And he said, "We do not use names. Our names are the visual image of the one we are thinking about. That is what we use as identifying as a name," which I could understand. And I asked him, "Why are you here?" And he said, that was in the beginning. And he says, "I will tell you. If you follow directions, if you react to what we suggest, it will have a great purpose." And from there on, he went to tell me some suggestions about some of the things that I could do. And one of them was find a way to talk to the whole world. And back in 1972, that was not quite an option.
Definitely.
Now you and me are all doing that.
Right.
So that was way into the future. And there were some other things that he talked about that he suggested maybe I should consider doing. He didn't tell me, "Hey, boy, do it." He didn't say it that way. There was just some suggestions of things that I could do. And that incident, it was burned into my subconscious, and I will never forget that. I remember the details in it, and
What did they look like?
Well, 7 foot tall. He was lit up. I could see. It wasn't just light. I could see something inside of the light, but I could also see, the gold color and stuff, and I could also see facial features, and the facial feature was typically just like you and me. He was definitely human, not even humanoid, but human facial features. And he was proportioned as you and me, just a little bit taller.
Right.
And
What did his eyes look like? if you remember?
his eyes were just like yours, normal human-sized eyes. I remember
color?
one thing. Remember, he never moved. He was totally constant, still all the time. And I remember also his lips never moved. There was just mind-to-mind communication.
Mhm.
And could you see any color of eyes or anything distinctive that?
That, if I did, I don't No, I really didn't.
Okay.
That it could have been anything, any color. We hear people from the Pleiades. They often have green eyes, but I have no idea. And he asked me. I asked him where you are from, and he says, "If I showed you the universe, no, if I show you the star sky, will you be able to point out where you are?" And I wasn't so sure I could do that. So he
Right.
said, then for me to tell you where I am from, it would have no purpose. But it is not in your world. So either he said your world or your universe. I'm not sure of that. But if he said not in your universe, that would make more sense than your world.
Right, because obviously he's not from Earth.
Yeah, because that was
Right.
what I'm concerned, definitely an interdimensional contact.
Mhm. Definitely.
We have a question from the chat room from Mary Ann Rush. What else did he tell you, Augie? Anything specific for humanity?
Yeah, not much. That it was more like about him and me, but he said there will be times, hard times, but do not give up. Keep your eye on the goal and you will succeed. Mankind will succeed if they keep their eye on the goal. There was something to that effect. Not those words necessarily, but that is basically it. And that is what we're having a big problem right now, because we got in the media and everybody and their dog out there, they're telling us lies every time that they open their mouths. So we it's really hard to keep your eye on our goals.
Yeah.
I
That
agree.
we need to get more used to, and I'm doing that quite a bit actually. That's why I have created my future. I know what's in it. I know
Yeah.
what's coming.
You chose it.
Yep.
Agreed.
Nos.
Yes. So I think that our audience would benefit most kind of hearing about how you had went from your own personal experiences into your involvement with the ufology community since that time.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I came to the United States. I came here to be a pilot. So for the next 23 years, that's pretty much all I did. Fly, and we had a flight school, international air taxi, that grew into an air carrier. So it was our company starting that out. So I was pretty busy for 23 years. And after I retired, then things opened up for me to start doing other things, to start getting involved with other things, involved with the mind. And inside of the mind, you find UFOs. It's a very interesting subject that I could not get around, because I started remembering back to the days when I was much younger. And I started researching, and I really got involved in researching the German flying discs that from 70 some years ago. That became very interesting to me. And also I was able to find some things, and I found people that knew more than I did. I live in Tucson, and in Tucson there was a gentleman, Colonel Wendell Stevens. He lived in Tucson.
I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had him as I was hosting and producing 2 TV shows in Tucson, and I had him as a guest, I think 2 or 3 times, where he talked about the German flying discs. And he was probably the most knowledgeable person in the world when it came to the flying discs, because he had documents. I was over to his house, and he had documents in German, many of them. And I was able to read those things, and I could see what the Germans had. Because a lot of this stuff, he never let it out. He talked about it, but he didn't give the documents to anybody. And I didn't get them either. But I made notes. Two kinds of notes. One mental notes and one written ones when I was sitting there with him looking at this. And that became very, very close to my mind to research, because I realized the German war machine, they figured out anti-gravity and interdimensional travel 70 some years ago. And after the war, when the Allied forces overran Germany, the Germans had mostly flown all of these ships out of there. As Wendell Stevens said, there were 163 known flying discs. And the Americans, they found there were 2 of them that they were able to remove from underneath in the underground bases where they built them, and they took them back to the United States. And those ships, they had the technology in them.
Mm.
So we here in the United States could re-engineer this, and they did. And I am sure that they have flying discs, somewhat similar. They probably look a little different now, but they have the technology for gravity nullification. I'm not using the word anti-gravity because there is no such thing.
Right.
You
Exactly.
never get rid of gravity, but you can nullify it. The gravity actually extend around the plasma bubble. It doesn't go away, but it stands around it, but it is neutralized within the plasma bubble around the craft. And this was created because it started for the Germans. They had their own Roswell back in 1936, where there was a big craft that crashed in Bavaria in Germany. And they got a hold of that thing, and there were some German papers explaining that they were trying to get into it, and they couldn't. So they were spending some time. They tried blowtorches, explosives. They tried a lot of things, couldn't get in.
Right.
But one thing that they discovered was that evidently it wasn't destroyed, because they tried to lift it, and it was almost like it weighed nothing. Now that was strange, and they didn't understand that. So then they finally got in, and in 1939 is when the first Haunebu flew. And it was unstable, so it kept crashing on them, and that's why it was hard to find pilots that was willing to fly it. So they kind of put the Haunebu 1 on the shelf for a little bit and rebuilt it, made it a little bit bigger, and now they're calling it the Haunebu 2, which is very stable. That had a gyroscope in it also, by the way, for stability, in addition to the electrogravitics, which they were able to change the output in different parts of the circle around it to make it steerable. They could steer it by doing that.
Right.
And this was run by the Thule Society and the Black Sun. Both actually. The Black Sun were more so into the early flying discs they built that had jet engines in it. But the newer ones, they used the technology that they developed in what they called the Glocke, or the bell.
Mm-hmm.
The bell disappeared, though.
Say again?
The bell disappeared during a test flight.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and that's why I mentioned the interdimensional part. It disappeared on them, but they found a way to be able to stabilize it, and they were using that as drive system in the Haunebu 2 and the 3, and I'm sure in the 4. If there is no real evidence of the force for I could see, except for what Colonel Wendell Stevens told me. He said there's all indications that there were a Haunebu 4, which was huge. In fact, I have the specs on the Haunebus that I got from papers that I got from Colonel Wendell Stevens. If you like me to, I can mention maybe the Haunebu 2.
Okay, go ahead.
I wrote it down. I want to make sure I got it right for you. It was in diameter. It was 27 meters. That's 76 feet across. Mm-hmm. And they called it the V7. And then it was driven by a Thule Taconator 7C was the designation of the motor. They had, for the steering, they had magnetic directional impulse generators placed around. Mm-hmm. And the speed, they said, was 6,000 kilometers an hour, or about 13,000 miles an hour. That is little more than halfway around the world in an hour. And the hole was double. It's a double hole with a cooling gel inside of it. And the metal on the outside, what they called it, a new metal alloy that they had developed. They called it the Victalian metal. Victalian metal.
I've heard of that. Yep.
Yeah. And they had a crew of 9. And they had armaments on it. They had 6 cannons, several other guns around it. And they also had something they called the Motorstopper. The Motorstopper. That means the motor stopper. And that was a Pristron tube that basically was a directional EM pulse. They were able to phase it, kind of like what a laser beam is.
Right.
Normal lights would spread out, but the lasers don't. The EM pulse spreads out, but they were able to phase the signal so that they could make it directional. And what they did with that thing, it is so phenomenal. I'm sure that we have access to these kinds of technologies now, but they're not being used. Maybe they're saving it for something, I don't know. But they used this Pristron tube and Motorstopper in the last few weeks of the Second World War. I'm going to take about 45 seconds to explain this, because that will also explain why we had the ground invasion of Germany. And that was because one night, the Allied forces from England, they sent 800 bombers in over Germany in one night. And in that one night, they lost a third of the airplanes. The Allied forces couldn't figure out, how did this happen? The Germans must have a technology or a weapon we are not aware of. And if this is going to continue, we will lose the war. So they scrambled and created, they knew that they couldn't win the air war, so they created the ground invasion, which was just thrown together in the absolute worst way they could have done it. And that's why so many people died.
Yeah.
And now I had on another computer, the test flight on one of the Haunebu 2s from the ground to 60,000 feet in 3 minutes, straight up against gravity. Because for them, gravity didn't exist.
Nullified.
Yeah, it was. That's correct. Yeah, it was nullified.
I heard when I did research on the same subject you're talking about, they were using it wasn't anti-gravity, it was gravitational disruptor engines. So what it did was disrupt gravity.
Yep.
And it made, say, an object that weighs 1,000 pounds, right? 87% of it, like what you're saying, was nullified. So you had, 23% of the weight? So you could lift it.
Yeah.
It would lift easier. But it was due to the spinning. They used mercury in the engine itself, and they spun it at high rate of speed, and they kept it at a really, I can't remember if it was a really cold temperature or a high heat temperature, but it was extremely high or low, one of the two, and it kept the engine running smoothly. Yep. They did not require nuclear powered engines like what they're trying to do now with alien craft, using micro nuclear powered assets. They didn't have to use that.
I think what you're talking about is the technology of the Glocke, right?
No, I was actually talking. Well, the Glocke was using a purple liquid, and I can't remember the name of that. But I was talking about the Haunebu and the Vril saucers,
Mm-hmm.
both. And I was going to say, going back to your 1930s comment about the Haunebu, I actually found in the National Archives a clip of a Haunebu test flight that was in Berlin during 1926. So it was even before the 30s that they had an operational system. It wasn't stable, but they were able to bring it up off the ground and then land it.
Yeah.
So it goes back a long time. And you were talking also, Augie, about when Project Paperclip happened, and we brought all of those scientists over to the U.S. and whatnot, and some of their technology. One of the discs that the United States developed was called the flux liner. Do you know what I'm talking about?
What did you call it?
Flux liner.
Oh yeah, okay. I have not researched that, but I heard of it.
It looks like a ball sitting on a cone. And the ball is the crew compartment that is encapsulated by its own gravitational field, so that when this object flies through space or through the air, the rapid acceleration and sudden stops and turns don't affect the crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the relativity field.
Right. So they do have that. And they've had that since like 1942.
They've had it for a very long time because the field is acting on every molecule in your body. So when it goes and it stops, it also stops every cell of your body. So you don't get the gravitational effect on it. So that's why when a UFO crashes, you should think that the aliens inside, they're dead, right? But they find live ones.
Right.
What's happened?
So, there is one more thing that I could mention on the Haunebu 3, and that is that could travel at 25,000 miles an hour and had a crew of 32. And there were 19 known test flights, according to Wendell Stevens. And they also had 232 feet across. That's a big ship.
Yes.
Now there's one even worse than that, and that is, according to Stevens, he said the other was drawings of the Haunebu 4. That was 393 feet across, but there they used not red mercury, but they put D2O, deuterium, that is radioactive water or heavy water, inside the Glocke. That was in the middle of the ship from ceiling to floor, all floors. And when they did that, they got lots more power out of it. They were much faster, but also he said it affected the metal because of the radioactive radiation. The metal got brittle more sooner. And a lot of the people that worked on that project, they got sick, and several of them died. So it wasn't a very good situation for the people that worked on it. And he also said that there's a good indication, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but he said they may have sent one of them off to Mars, and they lost contact with it, and nobody knows what happened to them. He thought maybe that the metal got brittle and they had an accident or something, so they got destroyed on the way there.
Right. A lot of people used to think that one Glocke that disappeared, not the one that went to Mars, but a different one, that it landed in the United States in the 80s. It just came back all of a sudden because that acorn UFO, and I can't remember where it landed. Nicole, do you remember where that acorn-shaped UFO landed in the United States?
Yeah, Kecksburg.
Kecksburg, that's it. A lot of people
There you
think
go.
that Kecksburg is the Glocke.
Yeah. Yeah, that just showed up. It looked exactly like the Glocke.
Right. And it had the same type of hieroglyphic writing around the bottom rim.
Yeah.
Which is what was also on the Glocke.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what you know about how the Thule organization actually came into the schematics and the design of the original discs?
Well, the Thule Society is more like a secret society, a spiritual organization. And in fact, Hitler himself, he became a member in 1919.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been around a long time. And right about that time is when Maria Ortiz, or Maria Orsic, they call her here, she started channeling deeply technical information from somebody in the Aldebaran star system. And they told her that we are giving you this design and information so you can build a spacecraft to come and visit us. And they gave her all kinds of technical stuff, and she wrote it down the way she was, told to. And she showed it to people, and they all laughed at her. Sure, a little 19-year-old uneducated girl come to us and tell us we're gonna build a spacecraft. Sure,
Right.
we are.
Yeah.
And she got it in front of a high-ranking military officer, and he looked at it and said, "Wait a minute, there's something here." So he took it, brought it to some scientists, and they came back to him and they told him, "Bring the girl." So she was brought to the scientists, and from there on, they collaborated. They got her information, and she started feeding them more information on how to build this spacecraft. So I know this is not just hearsay. Yeah, it may be hearsay, but not just made up.
Right.
This really happened because there are papers in German saying so from that area. And I believe that it was very quickly ushered under the Black Sun and the Thule Society, and they were working on this. So I am quite sure that between that and the flying disc that they found in Bavaria and maybe their own research, they figured out how to build this thing. And that's probably how the Haunebus emerged into science.
Mm.
Right. What I wanted to add is Maria Orsic and some of the other women that were channeling the information to paper had really long hair. And their idea was that the longer the hair, it was like an antenna, and it would help them channel the information better. So the longer your hair was as a woman in this organization, the more information was clearer to the receiver, which was the women. And so that was interesting. Yes.
I hate to say this, Tim. Why do you think I have long hair?
I thought you were part of the Who or something.
Yeah,
Hey.
I could be a delayed hippie too, for all I know. But no, why do we also think that women are more intuitive than men, usually?
Well, men are trained out of it. It's cultural.
Yeah, there is a reason for this. And there is actually some evidence to this because in Vietnam, they used Native Americans that had long hair as scouts in the bush over there. They all seem to survive. The ones that they cut their hair off, they got killed off. So your intuition is better if you have. Hair is the antenna of the soul.
I've heard that before.
Depends on the hair.
Like depends on your your arm hair. Like they say, oh, you get the goosebumps. Like that's our way of like interpreting things that are happening, going on around you. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm in trouble. I have no hair.
Yeah. From what I remember reading is that Maria Orsic or Orsic, she started channeling in 1917. And she had done that for almost a year before anybody would listen to her.
Only a year? That's surprising.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's but we know that the Germans, they did succeed at many of these things because they built also a base in Antarctica, and we know we have the evidence of that. There's the voice recording of let's see, German Navy Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz. And in fact, I wrote this one down too because I want to make it accurate for you. He said in a speech, the German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer in another part of the world a Shangri-La of impregnable fortress. That was their base at Neue Schwabenland, base 211 in Antarctica. That is over in Queen Maud's land. That's where they built it. They found a huge cave inside of a mountain. And it was huge and very long. And they moved, according to the end of the war, there were about 20,000 Germans that just disappeared. They didn't show up anywhere afterwards. Maria Orsic was one of them. Where do you think they went? Probably most of them to Antarctica, and some of them to the base on the moon. But I think most of them went to Antarctica, where they built a society of their special technologies involving free energy and medical technologies that they had developed. And some of them were not very good for their enemies, so to speak. But I think they moved there, and there's a lot of them. It could be a couple of million of them there now building in that cave, as well as there's also an ice cave that they kind of started to build in.
I also heard that they may have moved off planet.
Yeah, they did. There is, if you go to Broadcast Team Alpha, which is our website that Nori and I have for our show, the Broadcast Team Alpha show, go into our website, broadcastteamalpha.com, into the picture gallery. You're going to see a picture. I think it's one of the first ones on page, at least the first 5 pages. There's a NASA print of a crater on the moon. And in the bottom of that crater, there's a building that looks just like a swastika.
I've seen that.
An old one. Yeah, it's very dilapidated, and it was very old. But the Germans, when they went to the moon and they flew around and mapped it, they found that thing and they fell in love. And that is one of their bases are right now, because they started rebuilding it. And they are there. So that's what we expect from a society that has no limitations on science and the development, because Hitler gave them absolutely anything you can create, do it. It's not like here.
Yeah. Nicole, what do you think?
I don't know. I've seen how it like kind of goes and resonates through like Berlin, but then you go back to what was the movie where they talk about synthetics, and it's going way back into like the 30s, I think. And Hitler was a huge part of that. But I think that it definitely shows that there were no limitations on there, like on I mean, if you look at Operation Paperclip, I mean, Russia got 4,000 of them. We took 2,000 of them. We took their technology. We got, allegedly to the moon. Like there's so many different things, different like facets to the whole thing. I'm not sure, exactly. I haven't looked into quite extensively on the moon bases with them, but it's definitely a fascinating. You can see it. I mean, even if you go into like Argentina and you go into like through all the areas that Hitler was he spread a lot further than what we even had an idea of at that time.
Yeah, the base 211 down there, that is kind of like a fortress inside of that cave. It's in actually, there is a picture that has been floating around of the entrance to it. That is, it's in the Hulig-Hoffmann Mountains in Neue Schwabenland. And that's, there is kind of like a half moon opening, and you can see that's dark inside. That's about something like, I forget the size of it, but 90 meters across or something like that, opening in Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a picture of it. I've seen it on YouTube. And in fact, you have it also on broadcastteamalpha.com. You can find it there.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's a huge opening.
Yeah.
I've heard that the United States actually sent missions up there to check that opening and go in and see the cavern. And some of the caverns are abandoned.
Yeah. Admiral Byrd tried, but he got his butt whipped when he came home.
Yeah, well, he got his butt whipped by the Haunebu discs, but I'm saying in regards to recent memory, I'm talking like in the 70s, 80s, they actually had a mission go to Antarctica and research some of those caverns under the ice, and the ones that were supposed to be in New Schwabenland were actually abandoned.
Yeah. Would you say?
Abandoned.
Oh,
there was
really?
nobody there. There was signs of renovation to make it livable for barracks and things like that. Okay. And there was a submarine channel, but there wasn't anyone there. So where they moved, we don't know. That's up in the air at this point.
Well,
but with their technology, they could have gone in.
They could very well do that, but I have a little different twist on that. Two comments on it. One of them is, who said that it was abandoned? If that came from anybody that was ever connected in any way, even remotely, to the United States government, I wouldn't believe 2% of it.
I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
But on the other hand, find any astral traveler. They can go there and have a look, and you will find
I think
a
it
lot.
was National Geographic that actually went up there and checked out the tunnel. I don't think it was the U.S. government.
Okay. No, they're still there as well. At least a few years ago.
Well, if they're still there, they could be deeper in to where they can't be discovered from the outside opening.
Yeah.
Because with the picture being on YouTube, everybody's seen, for the most part, where that opening is, which also means that the intelligence community also has that information.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're really not protected unless they go farther in. Now, with their technology, of course, if they had that type of technology back in the 30s and 40s, and now it's 2023, it kind of makes you wonder how far they've advanced since then which would
Absolutely.
make them look totally foreign to us, totally alien. Now, from what I understand,
Right.
the flyover over the White House in the 50s
Mhm.
was a show of force of the Haunebu discs. It was not alien in nature, it was human in nature.
Nope.
But
Exactly.
with reverse engineered technology. Now, the funny thing about it is, I don't have any evidence to prove that these things can fly to the moon or Mars, but there are documents out there that say that these things have done that. Now, Nos, I don't know what you think about that, because
Yeah.
I know the Celestials are trying to prevent humankind from exceeding our localized space because of our limited growth potential at the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest problem is preventing anyone from getting to the third phase of relativity fields until there's a singular global governmental authority. Because, you know, just look at it this way: no matter what your affiliations or preferences are on the political spectrum, or nationality or ethnicity or any of that stuff, or even religious ideology, just think about those people that you identify as opposed to your way of life, and imagine giving them the ability to do a full traversal of the world, dropping nuclear bombs on every capital in 60 seconds. Because that's what that means, to have that technology. And until there's a one world government that can actually monitor the development of that technology by anyone and shut it down, no one is safe with that technology being developed.
Right.
Yeah, but I also know that there has been some interference in
Yes.
that. There are bases up in North Dakota that had flying discs sitting over it, and it neutralized the nuclear material and shut the station down.
Yeah.
And I also read a report from over in the Ukraine back in the 1980s, where there were people in the silos, and the nuclear rockets, they armed themselves and started the countdown, which is
Yeah.
60 seconds.
Yeah.
And then 15 seconds later, it shuts itself off.
Yep.
Yeah.
It
The
was
same
just
thing
a
happened
show.
in, yeah, the same thing happened in Russia as well. The computers were not part of any computer networks where anyone could remotely send in codes or anything. The codes entered themselves on each of the computers for every single one of the 12 ICBMs.
Yeah.
They went into launch, the hatches opened, they started venting the coolant. They were ready to go. And they had the coordinates entered and everything, and they shut themselves down right before they took off. The message there is pretty clear, is that we have control of your nukes. You don't have weapons of mass destruction. You have liabilities of mass destruction. You keep playing with it, we'll show you what happens.
Absolutely. So in my timeline, there's going to be no World War III. It will not be.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the things that Nori and I put together a mastermind where we are able to, we do incredible things on that mastermind. We are designing the future the way we like it to see. We are helping people with health problems. And there are people having, I mean, anything from mailbox money to really, really abundance showing up from nowhere. This is the kind of stuff that you create when you have a whole bunch of people joining the minds together and focus on a specific issue or purpose.
Yes.
And when we do that, good things happen.
Yeah.
So if anybody want to join us, get in touch.
Yeah.
There's a book you should read. I'll tell you after the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Odessa has to go pretty soon, we're going to go around the panel and take last comments. Augie, what would you like to say?
I would say never take no for an answer. And that means for absolutely anything that you want in your life, because you can have it. We live in a mind-created universe. Quantum mechanics shows us that. It's proven it by repeatable experiments. We live in a mind-created universe. That means if you set your mind on something and keep thinking it, visualizing it, intending for it all the time, it's going to happen. Whatever you allow in your mind to dwell the most is what you're going to have in your life. Make doggone sure that it's good stuff that sits up there.
Yeah.
And when I pointed to the head, I didn't really mean that, because there's a brain in the heart also. Got about 45, 50,000 neurons in it. And that one is responsible for much of the things that happens in your life in emotional sense.
Right.
So you create your own reality. And in fact, I wrote a book on exactly how to do that, on how to teach your mind how to work your mind in ways that you normally would think would be impossible. And the title of that book, I can't help it. I got no shame. I got to tell you. It's Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. If you read that book, your life will change. I get emails every week from several people saying that changed my life. I can do things I couldn't do before.
Well, that's cool. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, for the book, go to Amazon, put my name in there, and everything will show up. It's been that, and also a TV documentary on aliens and Agenda 21. I have up there too, that tells you everything about what they have in mind for you. But I also, you can find me on Broadcast Team Alpha. Go in there and send me a message, and I'll get it, and I'll get back to you.
Tino in the chat says what book, but I think what he was just saying, Tino, is if you type in AAGE NOST into Amazon and say AAGE NOST books, his books will come up and you'll be able to see them.
Yeah.
Where else can you be found? What is your YouTube podcast? And
YouTube, we're at Broadcast Team Alpha, where you find both Nori and I, and we're there. We have over 500 videos now, finally, and we are teaching you there also how to use your mind in ways that you normally would think would be impossible. If you go into the video section, not the live section, that's all the shows. The shows are good, but in the video section of it, you can find a lot of the videos that I've done. How to reprogram the mind while you sleep is another good one. It's so simple. It's easier than falling off a log. And I should know that. I used to own a forestry.
Right. Okay, well, what we're going to say to you, AAGE, is since we weren't able to get into the other subjects that we talked about backstage, we would like you to come back on the channel so that we can talk more about the other subjects as well, which was time travel, interdimensional beings and such. And we would like you back. Would you be willing?
Yep, I'll do that. In the meantime, let me just give you one pearl. I wrote that down because we keep saying that we want disclosure. It's been done many times. And let me see if I can find that thing I wrote down, because there is a smoking gun document. And if I can find that, I'll read it to you. No. Yeah, here we go. Go to vault.gov.fbi. Go in under UFO groups. There is such a thing. In under UFO group and search for document number 6751. You will find where the government admits that, yes, we know there are aliens here. We communicate with them, and most of them are interdimensionals. Go look it up. There's your disclosure.
Another thing, too, if people are waiting for the U.S. government to come clean. It's not going to happen. I mean,
No.
the Schumer,
I mean, they have
UAP
already.
the Schumer UAP amendment recently passed, but it was gutted. They were going to have a review board for sorting out data and collected information, videos, photos, documents, whatever they received, right? So that they could decide on their own, the review board, by the way, that what they were going to release to the U.S. public, okay? Problem is, if it was a threat to national security, a threat to national security issues, or to federal agents doing their job, then it would not be released. So what they did is they took that review board out of the bill.
Yep.
And they passed the bill without that review board. Then they put in a clause that said that the president could release the information in 25 years from now. Okay? And after 25 years, he could reinstate another moratorium of 25 years.
Right.
So it's going to go on and on and on. So it's the people that were in charge of suppressing the information to begin with are still in charge. And and the funny thing is, the people that forced the bill to be changed weren't elected. They were appointed. They were part of the intelligence committee, not the intelligence community. There's a difference. They applied pressure on the House of Representatives and they shut down the bill. So if you want to know why UFO or alien disclosure is not happening in the United States, that's why.
Right.
So,
yeah, and that's
their discrepancy on whether or not they even have the security clearance to even, about things that have been disclosed, not just unidentified. So.
Right, I agree with that. I think what I was talking about more was the framework for how they would release the information or the data is no longer there.
Right.
I mean, we were taking steps forward, and now we've gone back about 35 steps. So I don't know what to say. I've been following Tim Burchett from Tennessee, and he's been outspoken in regards to the UAP amendment. And he says that it's all about power and money and greed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what a corrupt government does, and a good CIA lapdog, they'll always do this.
Exactly.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
So that was my last comment, other than the fact that, Augie, you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, you just call, I'll be here. You know the saying, I've never met a microphone I didn't like, so I'll be back.
Okay.
I love that. I wanted to thank you, Augie, for coming on, and I really also wanted to hear more about the interdimensional perspective on things. And so I look forward to having you come back, and I want to thank Odessa for rocking that chat, and Nas, and
thanks, Nicole. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys.
Everybody is so excited to have Aga here, and you have no idea. Everybody's just kind of what do we ask? I don't know if you've been paying attention at all to the chat, but they're very excited to see you, and we all hope you come back.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and every so often I get asked by people that really don't know me very well after they hear me once or twice, and then they say, "Do you really believe in aliens? Where do they come from?" And I said, "No, it's not where they come from. It's more like when."
We're going to get there. We are going to get there. It's going to happen.
When do they come from?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it involves both when and where, but that's my belief.
They come from everywhere.
So, Nos, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, when it comes to the matter of disclosure, the situation is that you look at the track record of every government on the planet, none of them have ever disclosed anything they've ever done wrong. What's happened is that other people have gotten hold of the information, they've exposed what's happened, and then the government has to go, oh yeah, our bad, but that wasn't under our watch. That was the people before us.
Yeah.
Right? We're totally honest.
Yeah.
And that's the game that they play. Now, what's going on in the US government about the power plays that are going on between the elected leaders and the Department of Defense is that the people in the Department of Defense know that the elected leaders are just temp workers.
Yeah.
And they look at the way that the legislature is operating and the way that those people are talking and how they're interacting with the media, and they're acting like a bunch of grade schoolers. They're not mature. They try to manipulate everything for their own personal advantage for their corporate sponsors. Okay. Nobody that's in an elected position in the US government can handle the responsibility of the most important information that humanity can be exposed to. So the Department of Defense is saying, we don't have anyone we can entrust with this information. We have to hold on to it ourselves. And it's going to stay that way. The only way that people are going to get the answers is for us to have a grassroots movement where people are willing to compile all the information available, follow the other leads that are available, and create disruption. And it's only through that disruption that the people that are in positions of power, like the elected leaders that don't have any of that information, can say, we didn't know better. Now that we have this available, let's follow it.
Yep.
It's what we have to do. That's the only way through to the other side of this.
Totally agree. It's up to us.
Yes. So we're going to take the power out of the hands of all of the governments, and then they're going to have to get on board with what we want to do.
And then fire them all.
Agreed. Agreed.
I would say that we are the disclosure. So, on behalf of everybody on this panel, I'd like to thank you for doing your part. So, the experiencer's disclosure is far different than the government's disclosure.
Oh,
so
for sure.
Right.
Hang on. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Great team.
So if you want to hold on a second here, I'm going to do something here. If you want to see AAGE NOST, go over to his channel, and it's called what again, Augie?
Broadcast Team Alpha.
Broadcast Team Alpha. Yes, they got a really unique banner and a very good broadcast platform on Zoom. So go over and check them out. Check out some of his shows, give him some likes, subscribe to his channel. All of it helps the algorithm so that he can get out there more to more people and share his knowledge and his expertise.
Yes.
Also, if you want his book, go to Amazon and type in his name, AAGE NOST, AAGE-NOST, and then write in book or books. And it will come up on Amazon for you, and it won't be a problem. So check it out, buy his books,
Definitely.
make him a happy man.
And I also want to say, anybody that buy my books, they have full access to me if you want to contact me, because this book that I mentioned, The Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking and How to Access the Universal Consciousness, is a teaching manual. I teach you how to do things in there so you can expand yourself. And when you start practicing, things happen. If you don't understand it, you could feel lost. So I want you to get in touch with me, and we can talk about it.
Definitely.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
So what we want to say to everybody in the chat room and everybody that's been watching online, this is our last live stream of 2023. So we want to say Happy New Year up front. And hopefully 2024 will be a better year than 2023. What I'm going to say is we're going to blow out this live stream with the UFO Man theme song as our outro.
I was waiting.
Yes, here we go.
And once